Human mistakes are actually what make music and film and everything creative perfect. I got tired of not taking action.
Like once you read the script or you hear the story, how do you hear the sound, right? Like how do you know what to compose? The most joy you will get is through the process of making that. Biggest and scariest steps is just releasing it. Like be more confident in the gift that God's given you.
The gift of salvation is a free gift.
But God has you here for such a time as this in 2026.
I'm really excited to see everything that's going to come from the future of this. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Jonathan, and welcome to Beyond the Cut. This is the very first episode, and this is my friend Ryan Garcia, and we'll be talking a lot about faith, film, and business. Us both being business owners of our own creative industries, and we're really excited to see everything that the Lord has in store for this episode. So, Ryan, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ryan Garcia, film composer, and the way I like to think about it is being a language translator. The director has the story in his head and he has to translate it to visual aspect, and I translate it to a musical aspect. So I like to think of it as a language translator. That's what I do.
That's really cool. So those of you that may not know, Ryan and I, we became friends probably back in October-ish of last year. He's actually working on a score for our first ever debut short film, and hopefully it'll be released shortly. But from the work that Ryan has done, it's been really, really cool to see what he's done and to really see how one can translate the scripts into really music and how you have to be able to, when you're reading the script, how can you hear it? And it's been really cool to see how Ryan's been able to translate the scripts that my writers have been able to put on paper and then being able to put that down into music form. So with that being said, um, so we have known each other for a while. At what point in our friendship did you realize that you were actually going to that that we were going to be creative collaborators?
It's a good question. I would honestly say, I think just based off of our Zoom calls together, like just discussing the film and kind of what it was going to be about. And I don't want to go too much into the film because I don't know how much you want to release about it, but it's more of kind of like in the mystery genre. And I really like dramatic music, whether that's mystery or action music. As long as it's dramatic and you get to a little bit overemphasize the feelings that might be there just to make it either a little bit more comical or a little bit more epic. I think that's kind of what drew me into like, I want to work on this project. And
Mhm.
then obviously with you, you're such a cool guy, fellow brother in Christ. And I think that's really what drew me to wanting to make the music for it.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I feel like in today's day and age, it's kind of hard to try to make connections with people in your field that are also a believer. I feel like that's been a lot more challenging than I've been realizing, especially being in this field for probably about 3 years. But when you, especially for me, when I make those connections with people, I want to make sure that I foster and I take care of those relationships because they're really important. And it's really cool to see how God can take those specific relationships and really be able to elevate it. And I feel like that's exactly what he's done, especially with what we've already been able to take care of, but also with what's also coming with the future as well. Because I mean, I don't know about you. I know we've talked about it, but I'm really excited to see everything that's going to come from the future of this filmmaking process and music making process. Because to me, it's only going to get bigger and better from here. And I mean, this is just the start. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how that really plays out and how the Lord is going to take what we're doing right now and making sure that we're faithful to do what we're called to do right now and right here, and be able to elevate it really to the next level, whatever that looks like. I'm really excited to see what that next step is.
Absolutely, same here.
Yeah. So, you were originally set to score our debut short film. When you were looking at the script or raw footage for the first time, did you hear the movie before you even saw it?
Ooh, I really like that question. And I've access to a couple of composers I know. Like, how do you, like, once you read the script or you hear the story, how do you hear the sound, right? Like, how do you know what to compose? There's so many instruments, there's so many musical keys, there's so many different things that you can do, different approaches. Um, yeah, that you can just do, and everybody has a different take on the same story and how it relates to their life experiences and potentially something that they went through that's kind of touched on in the film, and they might score it differently because of that. And I think a lot at the end of the day, it's just experience. You mean whether that's from living life or going through a season of trial or a season of blessing, and kind of tying that to the film and project that you're working on. Like for instance, this like I already mentioned that I love dramatic music, and so for me, I was kind of like, oh, this has to be like almost dark, mysterious, ambient kind of thing where we have like some swelling strings or whatever. That's what I heard off the bat because for me, that's what I love. Like I love
Mhm.
kind of immersing the audience into the film where they're like in the story rather than like, oh yeah, we're just watching a play or whatever, something kind of like that. So I think
Yeah,
it's something that's very hard to describe in terms of how do you hear it, but I think at the end of the day, it's more of like experience and what you've gone
right.
through.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I was before I had even asked you about if you could come on to a podcast like this. I mean, I was just watching a video about how directors like Christopher Nolan and Ryan Coogler, they're able to they built those relationships, especially between like Ryan Coogler and Ludwig. I forgot his last name, but they
Hmm.
met each other in college, and the two of them are pretty much have been working side by side with everything that they've been making for years now. And I can say those types of relationships are really cool to see how you can really start off really small and it elevates to something crazy. And even to see how directors like Christopher Nolan have worked with people like Hans Zimmer and Ludwig, like they've worked with together for years, and to see how each different project is gonna bring something new is really really cool because I'm just like one script can be totally be translated to something different, and to see how each different project is going to be different and how both in the director's uh, point of view where he's the one writing the script and putting it down on paper, and then you're pretty much putting that down from what you're understanding about the script into musical score. That's really really cool, and to see how
Yeah.
that really changes up with every single movie that is made, because you can see from like Oppenheimer to Tenet, like or even like I'm just referring to Christopher Nolan, how each individual score, even if he's working with the same composer, is so different, and that's all based on the script itself. So yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, um, how has your musical voice changed from those early conversations we had to the film that we're still making right now?
Specific to the film or just as a creative overall?
It can be both.
Okay, I think creatively overall, I've gotten a lot better at making more cinematic ambient stuff. Um, it's kind of interesting because I tend to find that my natural voice in music is epic action, dramatic music, something similar to, I guess I would say like a mix of Hans Zimmer and epic score,
Hmm.
and kind of just like hard-hitting drums, big brass, big strings, and all that. But I've really tapped into lately the past couple of months of slow developing scores, which is like let the strings take time to develop the chord progression and the melody. Um, I mean, you don't have to go on a 11 on the intensity scale right away. Like you have time to drag things out. And I think that's translated to the film that I'm scoring where with you, where it's like I don't have to hit every single scene change. I don't have to hit everything on the dime, where it's just kind of like let the music develop and kind of envelop the story and the visual aspect. And like I talked about earlier, immersing the audience within that because it's gonna feel a lot more natural rather than just kind of like on the point. Whereas it's even music in general, where like if you just have everything on the beat 100%, it's
Hmm.
like with an orchestra, it's gonna sound very, very electronic and not very realistic. Whereas if you have little imperfections here and there and let things slowly develop, it becomes more of this beautiful piece of music
Yeah.
with the imperfections that are in it.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was just watching a video from Charlie Puth, and I love his music. And ever since he started this series of Professor Puth of being able to break down music and how he scores and how he's able to like analyze it and make sure it's and explain it. And I think that's really cool. I think when you're able to master a skill and then being able to teach it, that's when I think when you really mastered that specific skill. So he was saying how um we interpret sound very differently, and also how um, it was a conversation about how what if AI takes over the creative industry and what that may look like. But he was saying how human mistakes are actually what make music and film and everything creative perfect. Even if it's not necessarily perfect per se, that's what makes it human. And you know how like even if AI were to try to, because even when you try to make AI generated videos or music, it just doesn't sound good, or even look good. And so when you're those human mistakes, whether good or bad, when you look back at it, you're just like, oh hey, like that actually looks pretty good. And that's what makes it human, and that's what makes it like worthwhile and wanting to make more, because you're just like, this has been great. Let me see how much more we can make from this specific thing. And yeah, I mean, I think when we get out of our heads, because I'm a perfectionist of how can I make this as perfect as possible, but also embracing the mistakes, because when we embrace those mistakes, I think that's when something great can happen. And
Mhm.
yeah, because if we try so hard to get everything perfect, we'll be there forever, and that project may never come out, because it's just like it's not good enough. It's not good enough. But then realizing that it is good enough, and it's okay if it's not as good as I want it to be. But at the end of the day, like I feel like something is better than nothing. And if what you're doing is you're okay with it and it's just good enough, then I say just release it, because you never know what's gonna come of it. And I don't know about you, but like I've definitely gotten in my head about this, and I'm just like, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? And that's precisely why I started this podcast, because I got tired of not taking action. And I'm just like, you know what? Let me just kind of really see how I can make this as simple and straightforward as possible, so that I can do this as much as I can, so that I can do this consistently, and I can create discipline for myself, is really, really important, so that you can replicate it and do the same thing moving forward. So, honestly, getting out of your head about making sure that it is perfect, because it's just like, what's the worst that can happen? I might as well just put it out there and see if anything comes of it, rather than getting in your head about, oh, wait, I don't know if I want to release this because I might get judged for it. Like, who cares? Like, just put it out there and saying, like, it's for your portfolio, obviously, but like, it's getting those reps in, so that you're building up your confidence that other people are seeing it as well, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with the whole in regards to the AI discussion, I've talked a lot about it with different people, and what I've come to realize is that I think the main reason people kind of, when you hear something's made with AI, you kind of like cringe a little bit, is
Mm-hmm.
because no one went through the process. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It's like with making music or anything creatively, like the most joy you will get is through the process of making that. Once you make that drawing, once you do the film, once you finish the score, it's kind of like, okay, next thing. You know what I mean? And it's not a bad way. It's not like, oh,
Mhm.
like you're just moving on like whatever. But
Yeah.
I it's pretty rare that I'll listen to my own music once it's finished because I'm like, okay, I went through all the emotional aspects of creating that. It was great, such a fun ride. All right, next thing. Because you get the most joy and satisfaction out of the actual process. And so for me, I
Yeah.
tell a lot of the younger composers I know out there is just enjoy the process. You mean because you that's a moment in time that God has given you to be able to do that. And now you'll never be able to do that specific score again.
Hmm.
Right. And it's not in a hopeless way, but it's more of just like enjoy the moment, enjoy the failures, enjoy the mistakes that you make. Because then you're
Hmm.
gonna look 5 years from now, you're gonna look back 5 years and be like, wow, like I made a lot more improvement because I enjoyed the process
Right.
and went through the hard work. And yeah, I totally agree with everything that you said there.
Yeah. No, because even with like editing videos, like I'm I really don't like watching myself edit. All right, if I recorded a video of myself, I hate listening to myself. Like my voice is super annoying, especially after taking like a video, even something like that, and being able to condense it. I'm just like, oh my god, like I hate my voice. Like, what am I doing? But then you're just like, it's not as bad as you think it is. After you just put it out there, you're just like, you know what? It's okay. Let me just move on to the next one and just getting those reps in. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the voice, you hear your vibrations in your head as well. So when you hear it on a video, it's like it sounds so light, it sounds so high pitched or
Yeah.
whatever. It sounds weird.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to, whether it's your voice or even your creative voice of whatever you do creatively, um, one of the biggest and scariest steps is just releasing it, like you said, and just like, hey, I've did the work. Is it perfect? No, you're never going to work on a perfect project. You're never going to get something to where it's like perfect. There's always going to be something to improve on. Um,
Yeah.
but having the self-confidence and courage to just be like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and release this.
Mhm.
And, I'm not going to spend any more time on it. It just allows you to, number one, get faster and improve. And then number two, just be more confident in the gift that God's given you.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's good because I'm just like, if I got in my head about everything that I wasn't happy with, I wouldn't put anything out there. And I'm just like, I'd rather put it out there and just get judged for it, even though people aren't as critical as I think that they are. I'm just like, who cares? Just put it out there and see what happens. You know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. What is one piece of music that you've written that feels most like you, regardless of the projects? Whether you feel, regardless of
Mhm.
whatever whoever you worked with, what the script was, that you're just like, this is me. If I my life or my story was in a piece of music that I've written, it's that. Is there a specific project that you've done like that?
Not a specific film project, but definitely a specific score that I've written. And this was released on January 1st of this year. So it's very recent. And it's the last release for Symphony Audio, which is another artist project that I have. And that one was called Remember Me. And I did shed a couple of tears doing it because it was based on when Jesus is on the cross and you have the robber next to him saying, Remember me when you enter into your kingdom. And I think just kind of reading that and almost scoring that part of the Bible,
Yeah.
it really like gets you emotional because it's kind of like
Hmm.
there's so many things that you can relate to that of just there's nothing else you can do in life to earn salvation or um, earn your way to heaven. And so for me, I would say like that's been the most impactful soundtrack that I've ever written just because of the story behind it and And like I said, and just the process. I mean, it was just it was such a joy to be able to write that. And right now, I consider my best score that I've written. I'm probably gonna write an even better score than that, which is kind of boggles my mind right now. But 5 years from now, I'll be like, yeah, I mean that was good, but I've made a lot better scores now. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely remember me.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I need to listen to that. I don't have had a chance to do that. But I think it's crazy you bring that up because I was just thinking about, and I had seen a lot of Instagram reels about this, about how The gift of salvation is a free gift, and that like there's nothing that we could ever do to earn that gift. Like there's nothing we will never. George Jinko was the one that said it.
Mm.
He said we will never be perfect. How can we possibly try to tell other people that will never meet God's standards? It's true. We'll never meet that. But at the same time, it's a free gift. We can either accept it and embrace the love of Jesus and really be able to say, yes, thank you, Jesus, for dying on the cross for our sins, and saying, and repent of your sins and make sure that you're doing your best to live a life pleasing Him to the Lord. And that's hard because you're just like, as a human, you're just like, oh my God, like, I'm undeserving, I'm unworthy. Yeah, we are, but like, he gave it anyways. He sacrificed his life for us. He knew everything that we were ever going to do, ever going to sin. Like, he already foresaw it before we were even born. He knew all the sin that we were ever going to commit, and yet he still did it anyways. I don't know about you, but that's like mind boggling to me because I'm just like, why would anybody do that? I wouldn't do that. I'm just like, knowing that somebody's still going to hurt you and yet you still sacrifice something for that person, that's crazy. And yet that's what Jesus did for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, one of the I like to call it like interstellar moments because people put the music when it's something that's super mind-boggling. Um, but God has you here for such a time as this in 2026, right? For example, this podcast starting on February 21st, 2026. He knew that when he created the world. You know what I mean? And that's like, dang, wow, that's crazy. You mean, and just different things. Like I could have been born in a different timeline, but I'm not. I'm here now for a
Yeah.
reason. You could have been born in Jesus' time, right? And but you're here now for a reason. And I think it also comes with an understanding that just God is in control and sovereign over all things.
Yeah.
And it really does help ground you, whether you're going through a season of trial or through a season of blessing, where it's kind of like you don't get too high where you have your ego puffed up, and you don't get too low where you then, like Job's wife, curse God and die. And Job didn't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I think just knowing that God is sovereign and he's going to lead you along the way. It's not going to be easy. Oh, I've always
Yeah.
said a lot of things in life are hard but simple, and he's going to be with you every step of the way. And I think that gives you the courage to keep moving on, especially something that could seem so fragile as a creative gift, because it's kind of like your baby where like you're releasing it to the world now. So if people say something bad about it, now it's kind of like you're either hurt or upset about it, whether it's just kind of like, okay, like this is the gift God's given me, and I'm going to be confident in that no matter what.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's good. I feel like what I've been learning about the Bible more recently is, I mean, I read the Bible for the first time cover to cover last year, and I've never done that before. And after reading it, I realized that this book has so much richness, and I had no idea. And the worst part is I didn't know that it was all this knowledge and richness was there until I opened it up and read it. But I didn't because I didn't even know why I didn't. But like it's sitting on my desk, literally collecting dust, and I'm just like, wow. And then when I'm reading it again this year, and I'm realizing that even up to the first time, there's a lot of stuff that I missed, and even from the Bible study that I'm currently doing right now, we can spend like 3 hours just talking about one verse and being able to really like connect the dots and being like this scripture pertains to something we were talking about earlier, and realizing that like the Bible is what I heard earlier was the Bible isn't a book, it's a library of 66 books of thousands of years worth of knowledge, and being able to it's all there, and it's not, it wasn't just written by one person, although it was orchestrated by God. Like, this is 66 books, and each book was written by somebody different, and each book had multiple authors too. And I just like, it's so crazy to think that like it's right there, and yet we still ignore it. But then we see that in the midst of it, God still uses it to bring things to mind and calls us to repentance and all that stuff, that we are just like, thank you, Jesus, that you have placed this in our lives. And we're just like, it really convicted me. I was just like, I need to make sure that I'm spending as much time in the Word as possible, and making that time every single day to make sure that like I'm spending time in the Word. And in the midst of that, I mean, He still gives us grace. He still loves us. He still cares for us. And in the midst of our own fault in our own lives, He still wants. He calls us to a relationship with Him. I feel like that's the biggest distinction about Christianity nowadays is you either have a religion or you have a relationship. God wants us
Hmm.
to have a relationship with Him. I think of our relationship, and I think that's a good relationship. This is the same way. Like, God wants us to have a meaningful relationship with Him, but we can't have a good relationship if it's just one sided. If you're the only one contacting me and I'm just leaving you on red and I'm just ignoring you, that's not a good relationship. However, more often than not, that's exactly what we're doing to God. We're just like, yeah, I'm too busy. I'm not. I don't want to wake up at 5 in the morning just to spend time with you before I go to work or anything like that, or go to class. Take that time, even if it's 30 minutes. Read 1 to 2 chapters a day, and just sit in His presence. Put on some worship music, and just sit in His presence and see what He pours into you that day. Because that's another thing. That's why we have to do it every single day, because it's daily bread. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
reading Exodus right now. The fact that God was able to send manna from the sky and quail, and He made sure that He sent it every single day. It wasn't just like, all right, I'm just gonna send my weekly shipping. It's there. No, no, no. Like, it's there every single day, and He wants us to come back because we're starving. Like, we're famished and we're thirsty for everything that the Lord wants us to come to Him for. But if we're not doing that, then it's just like we're gonna die of starvation and of thirst. So it's just like making sure that we're still coming to Him and being like, Jesus, like, this is what I'm praying for today. Please guide me, lead me, speak to me today. I want to hear from you. I want to know you more. I want to see you in my drive to school or work. I want to see you in the conversations I'm having with people. Speak to me today in class. Like, it's every day. It's not just like these snippets of things that we can pick and choose from. What God tells you that day, that's for that day. We can't be like, I don't want to hear that today. No, like, it's all for you, and it's all right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been this analogy. I don't know where it originated because I've heard it from multiple people, but this idea of signal and noise, right? Where you have to focus on the signal and block out the noise, all the distractions. And if you think about it, there's a lot of noise in this world, right? There's
Mm,
so many things going on the news or with your friend group or with family. There's just so many things that the devil uses to distract you and keep you busy, right? If you're not sinning, he's going to keep you busy, right? And what I found is that when you focus on the things you need to get done, right? And focusing on God's signal of like, what does God want me to learn, think about, and do today, then your day just gets a lot better. And I
mhm,
think agreeing with what you were saying, for me, what I've implemented this year is kind of like my mornings are sacred. Like when I get up, at least 30 minutes of just silence. I mean, whether that's reading the Bible or thinking about an idea that I want God to reveal to me, right? Because I post pretty much every day on Instagram a thought for the day or whatever, but that's just me sitting in silence. And I've learned that that's one of the most underrated things nobody talks about is silence. Like everybody, it's like silence is so loud to people and it's so uncomfortable, right? It could be like awkward or but yeah, just awkward, but I enjoy it in the morning because it's just kind of like you're in the presence of God
Yeah.
and not audibly like in Samuel where God is calling Samuel in the temple, but um, just kind of like God reveals thoughts to you and being like, oh wow, and this idea and this idea and this thing, and it's kind of like you start processing and looking at life a lot differently, and that sets up your whole day because now, like you said, you started your morning with at least like 30 minutes of silence, whether it's reading his word or just meditating on a certain verse or a certain thought that he's revealed to you. And now you go with your day with so much more kindness, with so much more grace. And we're not perfect. We're gonna fail. I mean,
Yeah.
we're gonna get upset and, react in a sinful way, but I think that really does help. And once you understand the idea of signal and noise and sitting in silence, all of a sudden the Bible becomes so much more open. I mean, it's
Hmm.
becomes so much more valuable to us. Obviously, the valuable is immeasurable, but I'm saying in terms of instead of it collecting dust on your bookshelf, now it's kind of like, I want to go read it. You mean like, what more can I learn? And like you were
Yeah.
saying, reading the Bible cover to cover, every time I read the same passage, I'll learn something new and be like, that did
Mhm.
not pop out to me the first time. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's and kind of connecting that to creative stuff, even in music, where I'm like, I've always had this idea musically, or I've always had this instrument, and I never knew I could use it in this way. And you
Hmm.
learn something new every day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like watching a movie, like your favorite movie, over and over and over again. Like you could watch it for the first time or for the fifth time. There's always going to be something new that you're seeing, regardless of whatever it is. There's always going to be something new. You're just like, hey, I never saw that the first time I saw this, or the fifth time I saw it, and yet you still see it. And that's exactly what our relationship with God is, where we see that like there's something new that we're not seeing, but we are not going to know unless if we get in the Word. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. And at the end of the day, that has to be our main source of inspiration. You know what I mean? And like I talked about earlier, it's a lot of it is life experiences, things that you've gone through, good and bad and ugly. Um, but when you look back and you really look back on especially the bad moments or what you perceived to be a setback in your life, all of a sudden it was God preparing you for the next opportunity. And
Mm-hmm.
now He strengthened your faith for that next opportunity, that next door to be opened. And then now you're like, wow, well, that makes sense now. There was a quote I heard.
Yeah,
I'm not sure who it's from, but they were like, life makes sense when you look at it backwards. When you're looking back, life makes sense, but it has to be lived looking forwards. And I'm like,
yeah,
wow, that's definitely how we have to be because we always have to be looking towards on the new thing that God is working within us and being prepared for that moment.
yeah, yeah. But also, I think it's a happy medium between looking for the future, but also living in the present. That's something that I
Mhm.
really, really struggle with because I'm a planner. I'm like, well, I need to try to plan out either the next semester or even like the next 5 years. Like, what does the next 5 to 10 years look like, and how can I try to achieve it? For the next however foreseeable future. But also realizing that like there's something that God has for us today and right now, and how can we live in the moment and live forth the moment, realizing that there's so much that God has in store for us today. You know?
Absolutely. And when you understand that God is preparing you for the next opportunity, it only makes you want to live in the moment. And that's why one of the sayings that I have is just enjoy the process. Good or
Yeah.
bad, whether it's good or bad, enjoyable or miserable, enjoy it. Enjoy the process that
Hmm.
you're going through now because you're gonna look back and be like, I wish I would have treated it differently. I mean,
Hmm.
we all have moments like that, but try to be as present as you can and just enjoy it and soak it all in because you only do it once.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. All right. So, as a believer, how do you handle the tension of creating music for a project that might not explicitly share your worldview?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's just getting to know the director. And in a funny way, it kind of ties into how you treat somebody as a client, right?
Mm,
So for me, my thing is I treat the client like they're paying me millions of dollars, right? Or I treat the client like they're a person, not just another customer. I mean, and I think that when you treat people like that, how they handle it is is going to be a good indicator of is this going to work out or not? Because
mhm.
sometimes, like you said, people could be like very transactional and be like, this just needs to get done or whatever.
Yeah,
Rather as you want to keep it relational, where it's like, hey, like we're working on this project and we got to do this thing, and how can we help each other to make sure that we're both giving each other the right information or a good enough amount of time or whatever it might be. I think that's a great indicator of whether the project may or may not work out. And another thing too is what is the script and what is the film, right? If we
yeah,
go through it and be like, what does it involve? What is the story, whatever, then that's one of the obvious indicators. But I think who you will work with too, because it could be a great project, but if the director you're not, if the director you're working with is not enjoyable or it's just not a great working relationship, then why do it in the first place? Because it's just going to be a road of despair, really.
yeah, yeah. It's really good because then it really all comes down to who you're really working with, like you said, treating everybody as they want to be treated. But also when you're boiling it down, when you're boiling down a film, you're just like it all comes down to the script and the people that are writing it. Because you could have millions of dollars worth of production value, but if you don't have a good script, you don't have a good movie. And most likely, people are not going to want to watch the movie because they're just like, or I mean, if they do, they'll write reviews on it and then tell other people don't watch this movie. And then that really hurts you as a filmmaker or producer. And you're just like, and then it kind of makes you look bad, either if you're a composer or a filmmaker, it really hurts you because you're just like, oh, I put a lot of time into this, and yet people are not happy with it. And it all comes down to the script.
Mhm.
Because even the film that we were working on now, I realized how important the script was too late. And that was an error on my part, but also how can we pivot and how can we also ensure that next time that we don't make the same mistake twice, but also make sure that like how can we kind of not fix it but adjust it and pivot so that we can finish it and still look back at it and be like, yeah, this was good. Like I'm happy with what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing too that I've talked to some people about is conflict resolution. If you bring up something that, whether it's a friendship, potential client, whatever it might be, if you bring up something that you know is going to kind of stir the pot in a way, or it's going to be a little bit conflicting to what's going on in that moment, how does the person handle that, right? Do they handle that with grace and truth, or are they handling it with pride and arrogance? And it's just kind of like, okay, like maybe I don't want to work with this person, right? And so I think a lot of it too is how do they handle setbacks? How do they handle when things don't go their way? And
Mm-hmm.
that'll tell you a lot about them as a person and not just a director or a creative.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I best learn people's true characters when like it gets hard, and when stuff hits the fan, that's when you really are able to tell if this is somebody that you want to either continue working with, or if you want to call them your ride or die person. And like when stuff gets hard, that's the real tell if you really want to continue building that relationship with that person. So yeah, I don't think I've asked this, but what got you into music and wanting to create music, but also like more specifically, why films?
Well, there's two answers to that question. There's a short answer and a long answer. The short answer is boredom, period, full stop, just boredom. The long answer is this was sophomore, junior year of high school, and I played a lot of video games, way too much. And my parents were like, hey, we want you to get your grades up, right? We want you to do well. Now you're entering kind of if you're going to go to college or what. And I was kind of like, okay. And I had some free time. I was homeschooled, and so I had some free time, and I would go on my laptop and like, oh, there's GarageBand or whatever, which I had dabbled a little bit with when I was 12. But I didn't really like the computer version for some reason because it was like audio files. I'm like, I don't really like this. I like the iPad version. We could just click the loops and make
Hmm.
something that sounds good right away. Um, but when I revisited the computer version on my laptop, I was like, oh, I like this actually. You can drag, and it was just a complete shift of the approach to it. And I just kind of dabbled with it for about a year. So that was December of 2022. And then in around the fall of 2023, my dad pulls up a soundtrack that he heard, and this was like a suggested soundtrack on Apple Music, I think. And he's like, "Hey, take a listen to this." And this was Epic Score, and the track was called Ride to Glory. And so he
Hmm.
plays it, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds like a movie or a trailer or whatever." It was so epic. And once I heard that, I was like, "That's what I want to make. Like, that's what I want to do."
Hmm.
And it never occurred to me that I could be like, maybe I could make music for movies. I was more of kind of in the pop, hip hop beats realm.
Hmm.
And I still kind of have a little bit of that in some of my tracks, but when I heard that track, I was like, that's what I want to make. That's what I want to do. And so in December of 2023, I got Logic Pro, and that was the start of the journey that God has me on now to what I'm doing today.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how we just have like pretty much that defining moment or that pivotal moment in our lives are just like this is what I was supposed to do. It's so good because that's it's the same way for me. I was just like I knew that I wanted to make movies because I've always loved movies my entire life. But I was just like I don't really know how I can do this. And yeah, I mean it was a moment in the midst of fear, which is kind of how it started for me, that God gave me the boldness to be like, and this is why I was called to this space because there's so much darkness in the world, just in entertainment industry in general. People like you and me is exactly why, and even the people that are watching, that's why you're called to that specific space. Whatever it is, you are supposed to be the light to the world, the city on a hill. You know, like people are supposed to look at you and be like, "That's Jesus." Like it's so good to see that if people were to look at you or question you or anything like that, that they're immediately going to see the light of Jesus through you. Because when you really boil it down, we're just a vessel, we're just a soul, and yet we have the power and the capability to really be able to bring people to Jesus. And if we are able to do that, then we have to do our very best to steward that gift and take care of it so that everything that God has us doing it for that specific time, we take care of it and we are able to do everything that the Lord has called us to do, whatever that looks like. So, anybody that's watching right now and you're kind of questioning what you're supposed to be doing or anything like that, genuinely, like, surround yourself with people that you trust and that you can go and ask advice for. But also try new things. Try something that you've never done before, and you never know. You might actually like doing it, or you might actually find out you don't want to do it, and it really helps you kind of narrow down kind of what specifically that you want to do. But also seek the Lord, like as Scripture says, seek first the kingdom of heaven, and like that is such an important thing. If we seek God, then we're able to he's the one that gives us that creative vision in the first place. And I say this to people all the time. God has planted a seed into each of us. Whatever that is, we have to go and find it. Because I know that there's something for each of us, that there's something that like we really, really want to do, or that we're really, really good at. We have a passion for it, and we have a heart for people, or whatever that is. Like there's what one thing. Seek the Lord and seek guidance and seek people that are going to help you and guide you in your journey, because if you do that, like things just really make so much more sense. It's like you stop trying to do it on your own And you're just like, all right, really, like, the joke. All right, I'm letting God take the wheel. No, like, you literally let God take the wheel, and you realize that you're just in the passenger seat as He's taking you on this crazy journey called life. So trust God and like ask Him, ask those questions, ask, seek, knock. Like, He wants you to ask these questions. That's why He's there. He wants us to seek Him and like ask these questions. But if we don't, we'll never know. So get into your word, get into the Bible, and seek first the kingdom of heaven. And I'm not even kidding. Like, things will just start making sense. When I finally decided that this is the field that I wanted to go into, and I legitimately, I'm like, God, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'm giving this to you. I'm surrendering this to you. Please, Jesus, like, take the wheel on this. Within 2 years of me being at my community college, I was able to connect with so many people that under any other circumstances, I literally don't think I would have ever had the opportunity to do. And that was the moment where I was just like, all right, this is where I'm supposed to be. And it's just those moments you're just like, oh, like God sees you, He knows you, and He already knew that you wanted to do that in the first place. But it's like, are you going to surrender to Him? But it's also like you can't just surrender to Him when you give your life to Jesus. Same way that you want to read the Bible every single day, get your daily bread. You also have to die to yourself every single day, and you also have to surrender to God every single day. You have to die to your flesh, say, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but I know that God does, and I'm done trying to do it my way, trying to do things a certain way and be like, God, let go and let God. There's a song by 1K Few. He said that one of his songs is let go and let God. The moment we decide to let God take the wheel on things, like I said, things just start one making more sense and start falling into place. And there's no other explanation to that except for the goodness of God and realizing that He had already orchestrated that in the first place. And it's just up to us to put in that effort to be like, are we going to foster and actually actively seek and pursue the calling that God has for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I boil it down to three things when it comes to calling. What are the tools, talents, and opportunity God has given you right now? Right? What are the tools? What do you have at your disposal right now? Right? If you have a phone, that's a tool, right? If you want to go download Instagram and start posting your thoughts or encouraging people with Bible verses, go do that. That's a tool. If you have a keyboard at home, you want to make music, that's a tool. You have a small laptop with, I started on a MacBook Air with 8 GB of RAM, which is kind of nothing for sample libraries.
Yeah.
That's like nothing. Uh, but I started, right? I didn't give an excuse of like, oh, I don't have the right gear. It's like, no, you have tools at your disposal right now. Number two, talent. For me, I never was really into performing music, but I've always appreciated. Like my dad always says his life is a soundtrack, and in a similar way, mine is too, where it's like I will hear certain music or certain songs, and I will think of one vivid moment where I was like, yeah, I was listening to that during this. Like I
Mm,
was at 15U baseball practice at night, and this is the song I was listening to when I was stretching. Like it's just weird moments like that. And over time, I kind of, like you're saying, found and developed that talent for music, of writing music and having a flair for the dramatic. Took me a while to get it because for me, I like to say I was kind of like a late bloomer because it
mm,
was later high school, and usually you have kids like, oh, I wrote my first symphony at like 6 years old. I'm like, okay, like nice, good for you, whatever.
mm,
um, but talents, what has God given you? What are the God-given talents that you have? And then lastly, what are the opportunities you have in front of you, right? What are the possible connections? My uncle does music, right? Like he doesn't do it now, but he was in that industry for a little bit. And so he gave very valuable advice on just performing on the piano or different things and connecting with people. Um, that's an opportunity. Talk to people, right? You might even have a friend that you might never even know that if you were to ask like, hey, do you know anybody doing music? They're like, oh yeah, I know so and so who's the CEO of this music company or whatever. Stuff happens. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
so when you look really look at your life and dive into God's word and look at what are the tools, talents, and opportunities He's given you, you're gonna find that like, wow, God is really good because He's given me this opportunity at this moment in time to be able to do this, to go and strive to do this thing, right? And build this
Yeah.
career. And at the end of the day, I'll finish with this. We can plan all we want. We can, find our calling and whatever it is, everything's nice and dandy. At the end of the day, we have to surrender to the will of God, right? When we have Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? He knows what's going to happen, but he also has the power to call down a legion of angels and pretty much kill
Mhm.
everybody, right?
Yeah.
Um, but he doesn't. And his prayer is, let this cup pass from me, but your will be done, Father. Right?
Yeah.
And so he was kind of like, he didn't want to go through it, right? Obviously, if there's another way, no, but your will be done. So at the end of the
Mhm.
day, like you said, stuff starts making sense when we get into the
Mhm.
Word of God and we're listening to God's voice. But it may not be the way that we envision it. And we have to be
Mhm.
okay with that. And that's the hard part. We have to be okay with this is the path God has us on. And it's going to be hard. You mean it's not going to be easy. If it was easy, then everybody would be doing it, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't be talking here being like, oh yeah, this is the stuff that we've learned
Yeah.
over the short span of our lives. But at the end of the day, you have to surrender everything onto the Lord, and He will make
Mhm.
your path straight.
Yeah. And I will say, almost every single time, it's not been with the way that I wanted it to. Because it's
Hmm.
just like, but also, as frustrating as things might get, sooner or later after the fact, you can look back at it and be like, yes, I saw the hand of God through that. And you can look back at it and be like, he orchestrated the entire thing. It was just a matter of the pretty much the puzzle pieces just falling into place. And before you know it, you have a complete picture. And you're just like, dang, like this was here the entire time. It was just like, did I surrender to the will of the Lord? You either did or you didn't. I mean, like, and it's super easy to, or it's super hard to. So yeah, yeah. So have you ever felt a spiritual block when you couldn't find the right sound, and how did you pray through that?
Hmm. There's been moments where you get writer's block, and I say that with kind of like air quotations because I
Yeah.
just choose not to believe that it is real. Like in my mind, like writer's block doesn't exist. Not for everybody, and it's definitely a, I guess, slightly controversial creative thing because it's kind of like, oh, writer's block exists. Like, no, I just choose not to believe it. Like, just straight up.
Mhm.
And because for me, I don't want to use that as an excuse. Like, oh, I can't write because I have writer's block. It's like that's not how things work.
Right.
The work still has to get done. Like for me, if you have a client or a job, like they don't pause just for you. Like, okay, like we'll wait till you're inspired. Like, no, that's not
Yeah.
how things work, right? If
Mhm.
you look at Hans Zimmer or John Williams, if they chose to believe like, oh, I have writer's block, so I can't write or whatever, they wouldn't be where they are today.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the soundtracks I've done recently has just been praying beforehand.
Mhm.
Where it's just, and no matter what project it is, even if it's just personal, like just writing music, we're just
Yeah.
praying like, Lord, let me write what you want me to write in this moment. Um, and over the past couple of weeks, the projects that I've worked on, I mean, it's just flowed. Like I've never written music so fast. Like I think I wrote 4.5 minutes of music in
Oh,
like 4 hours maybe or something like that. I mean, now obviously that was a little bit easier because there wasn't a whole lot of changes within the project. It was kind of like just kind of develop the whole thing. So that's why it's a bit faster. But I give glory to God on those projects and every project that I work on because it's kind of like I wouldn't be able to do it without him. Right.
yeah.
And even thinking about that where it's God created this idea of music and pitch and rhythm. And it's like, can you imagine a world without music? Like that would be weird. But
Yeah.
he gave everybody the gift of being able to listen to that and being able to um, just see the impact and emotion that it can convey. So I think when it
Right.
comes to like spiritual blocks, I don't think I've experienced that quite yet. Maybe you can consider it as just like being less inspired to do it, but at the end of the day, I think prayer just helps a lot beforehand and just being like, help me write what you want me to write and lead me to what you want me to do in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a good segue to my next question, which is, does music have the power to convey the gospel in ways that words can't?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I like to think of myself as a language translator, right? You have the director, he has a story in his head. He's got to translate that to a visual aspect. It's my
Mm-hmm.
job to take that story in his head and translate that to a musical aspect. And it's obviously very difficult to be like, oh, that's what this is trying to convey here in the music. But if you hear soundtracks like Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
Jaws, Jurassic Park, Interstellar, Inception, right? You'll immediately know, oh, it's from that movie because it's the soundtrack. And now they've
Yeah.
grown very popular because of that, but the thing that it does well is that it conveys the story of the film, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like with Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan. Like Hans Zimmer didn't write the theme for Interstellar, he wrote the theme for the little story that Christopher Nolan wrote about the relationship between a father and a son, I believe. And I think in the same way, it's like with the track Remember Me that I released. You definitely feel the emotion and impact when you convey that message, right? When it's like for me, it was scoring the Bible. Let's just put it that way. I believe, I want to say it's Luke 23 is what I scored. And I think it's just the emotional impact of the music because there's a story behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of tying into what we've talked about earlier with the whole AI, right? There's no like true story behind it. There's like it's fake. Whereas when you take substance, life experiences, the Bible, and everything else, it becomes so much more relatable, and the impact is just felt in the music. And you see God work through amazing ways in music and songs that people write and scores that people compose.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think there's so much power in the ways that I feel like the question that the music has the ability, or even like a silent film or something like that, where there are no words, could really be able to convey the goodness of God even without it. But even if it does, like, words are very powerful. But how much more powerful is it to create an instrumental or a silent film, like, without words? Like, you can still tell a great story and still being able to point it back to God, you know?
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
sorry. Yeah. So, moving on to, I guess, the business side and the film industry pillar. You run your own business now, and what was the scariest moment you faced when transitioning this from a hobby to more of a professional composer?
Ooh. To be quite honest, I'm not very sure. Um, I guess the most nerve-wracking part would be, am I going to find clients? It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really about the music. Like in my mind, I know I make good music. Like when I show my music to somebody or whatever, like I know it's good, right? And
Mm-hmm.
even if they don't like it, like I know generally speaking, my music is good. I'm not gonna go as far as to say it's great, but I know it's good music. And so that wasn't the issue, but I guess the nerve-wracking part was like, am I gonna find clients? Like,
Yeah.
are people going to be willing to bet on I started when I was 18, so an 18-year-old kid, with this dream of doing music. Like that was just a question I had. You know what I mean? And it's not that I was afraid of doing the job. I was like, I know I can do the job. It was just, will there be an opportunity to do it? Um,
Yeah.
and thankfully, God put me with some amazing people, including yourself, and just different things that have happened over the past couple years that have just been like, I'm glad I didn't give up. I'm glad I have stuck with it, and I've met amazing people, worked on amazing projects, and um, I'm just glad that I've just surrendered and followed God and just this whole journey and stayed through it.
Yeah, I that was also a concern that I had when I started my business. I'm just like, will I be able to make money from this? Because it's super easy to like want to pursue your passions, but then you're just like, okay, but I still have to be able to provide for my family, or even
Mhm.
provide for yourself. But in preparation for, I still have to be able to provide for something. I can't just, I can't stay in my parents' house for the rest of my life. Like I have to be able to provide for myself, and so that was definitely scary for me because I'm just like, will I be able to? Like I don't really know. Yeah, I mean, I totally get that because it's really intimidating to be like, will I be able to, and really start like questioning if you're even qualified in the first place. But there's the reason you're supposed to be, you feel that level of like conviction is because you know that you are supposed to be doing it in the first place. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And so, like I said, I still have a lot to improve on my music, and I tell everybody that, like, hey, I still have a lot to prove on. I've only touched the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion. But I think the main thing was like, is there going to be opportunities? And I think every creative struggles with that. Where there's like, oh, like I'm not finding work or whatever, or they're not paying me enough. Or for me, it's like I talked about earlier, where it's focus on the relationship, not the transaction. You
Mhm.
mean focus on treating your clients like an actual another human being, like just
Yeah,
another person, because they're as human as you are. You mean, and
yeah.
even if it's bigger projects, like let's say right now, if Christopher Nolan were to reach out to you and be like, "Hey, I want you to be my assistant director," whatever, you still have to be able to have the guts and courage to just treat him like another human being. And you're gonna
Hmm.
get a lot more value and provide a lot more value by doing that. Whereas, oh my gosh, it's Christopher Nolan and being kind of like starstruck.
Hmm.
So I think how you handle that, and again, just trusting God is gonna tell a lot about who you are to other people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of power to like treating it as a relationship because you never know if what you're who you're connecting with, if that will potentially lead to something bigger or better, or even connecting it with them using you as a reference. Like you never know, but if you don't treat them as one a human but two with respect, then you'll never know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in the film world, music is often the last thing that's added, but the first thing that people feel. How do you advocate for your value when budgets get tight?
Hmm. Well, I'm glad to say that I haven't had too much trouble in terms of like negotiating. It's been pretty straightforward with my clients. Um, yeah, I think later on in my career, there's obviously going to be a point where you're going to have to say no because of the budget
Mhm.
or just because of time. Like, I just don't have the time to do this project. So let's revisit that question like 5, 10 years from now when I'm doing this full time. But
Right.
theoretically, I think it would just be more of understanding what's the project needs, what is the goal of the film, right? Because it could be a low budget project, but if they're gonna submit it to a bunch of film festivals or somebody else is gonna see it, like a composer or whatever, then that's a lot of value. So look at it as what's the amount of value I'm getting for this rather than what's the amount of money. Because for me, it's not about money, it's about value. Like
Right.
typically with my clients, if it's lower budget, then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna keep the rights to the music so I can still release it on Spotify or whatever. And at the end of the day, it's yes, know your value, advocate for yourself, but also understand like people have to make hard decisions, right? So if it's a low budget, then you're gonna have to make the decision of like, are you gonna say no because of the monetary value, or are you gonna say yes because of the potential long-term value? That's up to the
Mhm.
person. I'm not gonna say whether it's good or bad, but that's up to you to decide.
Yeah, it's a situational thing. Not every person is going to be the same. Um, yeah, I mean, I've had calls like that where I'm just like, I don't really know if I'm willing to do this project because either I'm not getting paid or the the return on it after having to rent equipment, being out there for 24 to 48 hours after the fact is still going to be worth it. And those types of decisions are hard because you're just like, I don't really, you never know. But also at the same time, I'm like, we still need to work on our portfolios, but also being able to, go to God and ask for discernment to see what's worth your time because time is money, and you want to make sure that you're stewarding your gift to the best you can. And if you spend too much time on something you don't think is fueling your passions, and you don't feel like that's what that specific project is what God is wanting you to do for that certain time period, I mean, you have to make that tough decision, like you said, and it's a lot easier said than done, because you don't want to hurt that person, you don't want to hurt that relationship with that person, but at the end of the day, you really have to figure out what's best for not only you and your future, but also for your business and for your business's future. Because I think more time I spent on my business, the more time I realize how much like I care for it, and I want to make sure that like I steward exactly what God has given me, and make sure that like I'm stewarding it to the best that I can. And whatever that looks like, being able to say no to people is really important.
Yeah, it's important and it's hard because it's no is viewed as the word no is kind of viewed as a negative, right? Where you say no and all of a sudden you get this negative vibe. Whereas look at no as like power, a power move where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna say no because of this, right? I don't agree with the film's content, or I'm gonna say no because it's like, I just can't work with that budget. I'm sorry. You mean again. Um, Sometimes saying that kind of allows you to assert yourself as an advocate for yourself, and you gain respect from other people. Like, hey, you know what? Totally respect that. And it might even make them be like, not right now, but definitely on the next project, we're gonna fundraise more or whatever, and we want to have you on our project.
Yeah,
You never know.
yeah, yeah. So, is there something, I guess, in your business? Was there a specific business mistake that you made early on that actually made you better off as an artist today?
Hmm. I think just the art of the follow-up.
Hmm.
I A lot of my first clients came from cold emails. So I put up a list of
Hmm.
like 50-ish colleges that had film and animation, and I just cold emailed them like, "Hey, I'm an aspiring film composer. If you're working on any senior projects or need music, just let me know, and get back to me." A couple schools got back to me, and I got a couple gigs out of that. Um, but all of the projects that I worked on from that came from the follow-up. Like no one responded the first time. And it was not until the second or third follow-up where they'll be like, "Oh, hey, got your email, thanks so much. We'll pass your information along to our students," or whatever. So I think learning the art of the follow-up, and not only in business but in life, where it's just like follow up with that person, like to see how they're doing, right?
Yeah,
Something as simple as, "Hey, how are you doing?" could change someone's life or change somebody's day. That's what I believe. One
yeah,
text can change somebody's world. And just following up, like if somebody mentioned that, "Hey, I'm gonna go to this concert," like a couple days later, like ask them like, "Hey, how'd that concert go?" I mean, whatever, and
hmm,
that just strengthens the relationship because people are gonna be like, "Oh wow, they actually care. Like somebody actually took the time to think about me today and reach out and be invest a little bit of their time into how I'm doing or how did I
yeah,
enjoy it." Uh,
yeah,
and if you do that with all aspects, life, friends, family, clients, people are just going to resonate with you a lot better. Like if we take two directors, director in A, director in B, or excuse me, composer A, composer B. Composer A kind of just treats, he's very good work. They both make very good music. One treats his clients like clients, the other one treats his clients like a friend or another human being. Which one is the person going to go with?
well, that treats people like their friends.
Exactly, composer B. And so a lot of people are looking for that differentiating aspect. Like, how can my music be different? How can my drawings be different? How can my film be unique or whatever? It's going to be very hard to find that. And so for me, what I tell a lot of the composers that I know is like, if you want to differentiate yourself, start by doing the little stuff. Improve your communication, improve your business skills, your mindset, how you approach things, how you handle clients, how you handle people. Because if you treat people really well, they're going to want to keep coming back to you. For
Yeah.
me, for just the music aspect, music is the thing that's going to earn you the job. How you
Mhm.
approach the client and how you treat them is going to determine if you keep the job.
Mhm.
And when you have
Yeah.
that in your mind, you're going to look at things a lot differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to recognize how important it is um, to foster a relationship where it may be one sided for a little bit, but like you said, I mean, you never know what somebody might be going through that day, or even
Yep.
just during that season of life. You never know. But it's all about the intentionality of reaching out to that person, like you said, and more often than not, whenever somebody's done that for me, even though it's been pretty rare, it does mean a lot because you're just like, oh, actually, like you said, like somebody cares and someone took the time to reach out to me, and it really does mean a lot. So yeah.
Absolutely. Like it'll be probably, I want to be accurate here. So maybe like 3 to 7 times. I would say on average, maybe like 5 times out of the year that somebody
Hmm.
will reach out and be like, "Hey, how are you doing?" Not, and I'm talking specifically like, "How are you doing?" Like, yes, people reach out to me a lot more than that, but just like, "How are you doing? How is this going for you?" And it's not that I'm like, "Oh, I get discouraged." Like for me, it's fine. I'm super happy when people reach out to me and they ask how I'm doing and ask them back. At the end of the day, you have to be that person that's willing to be a pillar in somebody else's life that no one else is willing to be. That's the
Mm,
mindset. Because, like you said, you don't know what people are going through. And you could be that only friend that reaches out, that one friend that's
yeah.
always positive, that person that's always encouraging, right? We don't know what goes on in the home, especially if you have, like, if you're in high school, college, whatever. And you could be the only person that encourages them in what they do at the end of
Mm,
the day. And so when you
yeah.
change your perspective to look at things from a 30-foot thousand view, you'll be like, wow. And you may never know. You will never know the full impact of what you've said, what you've thought, and what you've done. But just knowing that if you're letting God lead you and you're surrendering to his will and you're just being intentional of like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm a net positive to everybody that interacts with me, you're going to treat life so much differently, whether it's in business or in life.
um, yeah, that's really good. Yeah. So, how do you balance the DIY hustle of a startup with the patience required to write a masterpiece?
Well, there's a lot of patience in writing a masterpiece. There's a lot of patience in doing the business successfully, right? Of being full time, right? And
Mm,
um, right now we live in a society that I like to call microwave society, where everybody wants things now, right? And
mhm,
success now. And I think a little bit, I, not the full blame, but a little bit of the blame I go to like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, whatever, because you see this 30-second clip of somebody succeeding at something like a composer. Oh, look at what John Williams did, right? Duel of Fates. Look at what this producer did. Look at what this person did, right? And people see that in 30 seconds and think, oh my gosh, wow, I want to go do that. But then what they don't see is the 20 years of hard work it took them
mhm.
to get
Yeah.
to that point, right? If we think about um, one of the greats, Kobe Bryant, the late Kobe Bryant, one of the best basketball players in the NBA ever to live, ever to play.
Mhm,
And everybody sees him like winning championships and, all these awards, but no one saw the late nights of him just shooting the basketball, free throws, and all that stuff. I
yeah.
think a baseball player was one of the Ripken players, Cal Ripken Jr., I think, where if he would have a bad game on the baseball field, he'll put the tee on the baseball field after the game and just hit, right? Hit off the
Mm,
tee. And no one sees the hard work in silence. Kind of going back to the theme of silence, where it's like you have to have what I call an unseen tenacity, where you have to have something that drives you. right? You have to understand that this is the gift God has given me. And when you fully understand the entire weight of that, it makes you, as I like to call it, it makes you go to bed at 2 in the morning, wake up
Hmm.
at 6 in the morning, and still be okay to go through the day because
Yeah.
you're just so inspired and so driven to do this thing. And not a lot of people want to do that because it's hard. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And the hardest part too is it's not so much the work, but also just the waiting period. Like it can take 10 to 20 years before you really take off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And are you willing to do that? Like 10 to 20
Hmm.
years is a very long time. That's 1 to 2 decades that you have to wait till you really take off. I mean, if we look at KFC, the franchise, Colonel Sanders didn't start till he was 68 years old, I believe.
Oh,
You know what I
wow.
mean? And you have all these people that started in their garage or started in something simple and over time got better and achieved what I like to call perceived success because success looks different for everybody. But at the end of the day, you just have to keep focusing on what the Lord has for you and take steps of faith as you wait on God.
Hmm. Yeah, totally agree. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of power to that. Because I think at the end of the day, when you finally have that defining moment where you realize like this one thing is what I'm supposed to be doing, that's all great and all. You can dwell on it for a little bit or whatever, but at the end of the day, you have to find, and this is the difference that I'm trying to figure out right now for myself is how do I define the difference between motivation and discipline? Um, and that's
Mhm.
been really, really challenging to really separate the two because like you said, on any short form content, you see someone who is successful, right? You see them and you're just like, yes, I feel fired up, like I feel like I'm on top of the moon and I can do the same thing. Like, let's just do it. But then you realize how hard it is and you have to find some form of not motivation, but discipline to continue doing it day after day after day and still being able to be like, okay, yes, this is hard. Yes, this kind of sucks too, but also I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. And finding that motivation to still wake up early in the morning, going to bed late, like it's not just motivation, it's the discipline of creating that schedule for yourself and making it as attainable as possible. We're just like, okay, if I boil this down, I can do this, right? But without it, it's a little bit hard. So finding that balance, because it is a balance and it's hard because you're just like, I don't want to do this, but you are forcing yourself to do it because you know in the end, either right now or later down the road, it will pay off. But I mean, the concept of having to consistently put in the work, it's like going to the gym. Like sometimes you know that you have these goals of physicality or whatever, but you know that you do have to get up early in the morning or late at night or whatever, and you know you really want you like you know the end goal, but you know it starts today by getting up early, going to the gym. That workout is probably gonna suck. You're probably gonna be extremely tired getting up, but more often than not, like as soon as you get the ball rolling, like you're up, you're at it, like, and then you're at the gym. That's why I think for me, especially with my business, I spent months researching, planning, and trying to figure out if this is even sustainable or viable. But the moment I was just like, let me just start. Like it's just better that I start and just try to figure this out. Like it really just got the ball rolling. So that's step one is that's why a lot of people say it. Step one is so much harder than step 2 through 10 because you're just like you're finally putting pen to paper. Like you're finally just like let's just do this, right? So it's a lot easier said than done, but like finding the difference between temporary motivation and sustainable discipline. Like, because you have to be able to do that 2 to 3 months from now when you are exhausted, when you don't want to do it anymore, when life is hitting you hard. Like, you have to find it in yourself to keep pushing forward. And you can't do that off of temporary motivation. It's just not sustainable, it's not viable. And so, yeah.
Yeah, the
Um,
last thing I'll say is pretty much like when you look to the world for inspiration and motivation, it's going to falter. You
yeah.
have to look for God because God is going to be that constant source, the cornerstone that we stand on.
Mhm.
And I forgot how I say it because I wrote this down in my notes, but passion is the spark that lights the fire. Purpose is the fuel that keeps it burning. You have to have a purpose.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah. Uh, it's, yeah. Everybody who's watching, like, keep that in mind. Um, yeah. So I got one more question. What does success look like for your production company 5 years from now?
Oof. Well, only God knows, I guess, at this point.
Yeah.
But I think 5 years from now is just doing it full time, whatever that looks like, doing music full
Mhm.
time. And I think just working on meaningful projects. I mean, it's kind of a fragile thing that God has given you a certain gifting and a certain calling. Well, we all have the same calling, which fulfill in different ways, right? It's in Mark, where Jesus is about to ascend into heaven, go into all the nations and proclaim the gospel. That's our calling. We just fulfill
Yeah.
it in different ways. For me, it's specifically it's music and other things, but I think just being able to fulfill that calling within the company or what
Mhm.
anything that I do, right? Whether it's music, whether it's baseball, whatever it might be, um, that is what the true success would look like for me. Even again, it's not really a certain project count. It's not a certain monetary value of like this much per year or whatever, which those are
Mhm.
all great. And I do have those written down, but that's perceived success because what one number for somebody that could be great might be something that's super small for somebody else. That's it just depends on how
Mhm.
you look at it and where you're
Yeah.
at. So I think at the end of the day, the true success for me 5 years from now would just be to continue to impact people in any capacity, whether that might be talking on a podcast like this, or creating music, or teaching something, whether it's music or baseball. Um, just finding ways to continue to just give God the glory in all that I do. One of the mottos that I've thought about and kind of, I guess, encapsulates what we've talked about and mottos for my life, I guess, is that I want to allow God to work within me and through me to
Mhm.
provide value to other people so that God is glorified at all times.
Yeah.
That's kind of like period, full stop. That is the definition of success 5, 10, 50 years from now.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you know, when we pass from this earth, we won't be able to take any of our material possessions with us. We won't be able to take the money we made, the cars that we own, the house we may have. We're not able to take any of that. But at the end of the day, we still have our faith in Jesus. And I think one of the things I've been thinking about more recently is um, we may have people that either may hurt us or people that are going to connect with us. But at the end of the day, or even like us struggling to try to make friends and being so attached to these people, you realize that you can't take these people with you when you go up to heaven. You can't have your crew, you can't have your clique. It's just you. And when you're standing before God, it's you and God. There's nobody else. He's not taking an account for all the friends that you made, all the people that you connected with in your personal network. No. It's just you and him. And that's really, really important to me because I'm just like being able to boil it down and just be like, at the end of the day, you're standing before God. And when you look back at your life, hopefully you can say that you lived a life godly and pleasing unto the Lord. So that when you look at him face to face, he says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the gates of heaven." That's something that I've been thinking about for quite a while, and I feel like that's really, really important. So, before we wrap this up, um, is there one thing that you want, if you were to boil it down, what's one thing that you would want to share with close friends or even to the future generations? What's one thing that you want to share with anybody?
Ooh, well, that help talk about no pressure on one thing. I love those questions because it makes you be very specific, but then kind of hate it because there's so many things you can add.
Yeah,
If I had to boil it down to just one thing, no matter what you do, creatively, non-creatively, like whatever it is, allow God to work within you and through you to provide value to other people so that God is glorified at the end of the day at all times. That's the best thing that I can say. That's the best advice. That's the best mindset, whatever you want to call it. That's the best thing I can give anybody. Right. And I'm going to say it one more time so that way people don't forget it if they forget everything else in the podcast. Hopefully they didn't. But um, allow God to work within you and through you to provide value to other people so that He is glorified at all times. That's
yeah,
the best I got.
that's really good. Yeah, I mean, it's super important to live a life pleasing to the Lord and making sure that you're doing everything that you can to live up to the calling that He's placed on your life. I mean, the calling that He has on your life is not the same on my life. Like it's different for a reason. Um, so yeah, I just want to thank everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Ryan, for hopping on. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Before we close, I'd just like to close with a blessing. Um, you guys may or may not know this verse from number 6, but may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Thank you guys so much for joining. This episode will be on my YouTube channel, and I will put out a edited version of this hopefully Wednesday. Thank you, Ryan, for joining. I really appreciate it, and I'll link his stuff down below so that you can guys go check it out. And yeah, thank you guys so much, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It's been an honor.
Thank you.